Have you ever seen viral clips on the internet and wondered how difficult are they truly? Well, in today's episode, we're going to go through a couple and see if they are legit and try some of them ourselves. So with that out of the way, let's get started with today's episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. I am your host Tyrant and we are back with another debunking episode. Now today's episode is going to be a little bit different from the other episodes in the series. Yes, we have a full series of debunking stuff because we're actually going to do some debunking today. Usually in these episodes we will, test the thing and see how difficult or easy it is, and a lot of the time we're confirming things. In today's episode I actually wanted to debunk some things, specifically because that is cheaper than me spending a whole bunch of money on a whole bunch of crap. Anyways, what we're going to be starting off with is a real gem actually, and that is a Bruce Lee one. Yes, we're going to be debunking Bruce Lee. Or are we? So this here, some of you guys have probably seen this before, whether, for me personally, I saw this literally in the early 2000s. Yes, I am old, right? But I'm sure a lot of people have seen this in the form of shorts in the last couple of years, because it obviously has gone mega viral. This is something that pisses me off. This one pisses me off. Because it's not real. So there's a couple of different things here, right? You see these clips of, Bruce Lee playing ping pong with nunchucks, and you see Bruce Lee obviously, lighting matches out of the air. There's so many problems with this in terms of, let's just talk about the physics aspect of it. Now, when it comes to actually playing, ping pong with nunchucks, you actually can do it. I've done it before. Funnily enough, when I first saw these clips back then, I wanted to try them, and my friend had a ping pong table at the time, and so we did it for fun, right? Now, it's obviously you're not playing a proper game of ping pong, but you can actually obviously return a ping pong ball with nunchucks. That is not impossible at all. Then when it comes to obviously lighting matches out of the air on nunchucks, well, the reason why this one is impossible is because if you've ever lit a match before, you realize how much pressure you have to actually apply to be able to get the match to light. So lighting it out of the air by hitting it is like, matches just don't work that way. But the reason why these are fake is not because, Bruce Lee couldn't do it or blah, blah, blah. It's because it's an ad. These are a Nokia ad from the early 2000s, and obviously that part of the clip is always cut out. But yeah, these are vintage Nokia, Nokia ad clips. They're not real, they're fake. This is not Bruce Lee. This was never Bruce Lee. There's a reason why the quality of these clips are like 240p. I'm not even joking, 240p. Like a good example, right, is recently I have cut the smallest thing that I've ever cut before, and that was literally the size of a grain of rice, right? Before that I'd cut something a little bit bigger, but recently I was able to cut something even smaller, the size of a grain of rice. And now the reason why I bring this up is because my camera shoots in 4K 50 frames per second. Really, really good stuff, right? And it's still really difficult to see something that small on camera, even with my modern, awesome camera, right? So this is in 240p on a black and white background. Being able to see a match this big at 240p, there's literally no pixels. Like there's nothing to even zoom in on or even try and see. The quality both helps the illusion, because obviously it's so low quality that you can't actually see any of the effects, while at the same time it obviously adds to the kind of the vintage feel of it. Like look how bad the quality is because it's so old. This is just a mobile phone ad. Not real. What have we got next? Okay, this is something we are going to try ourselves because I want to try this. So there's a German show out there, I believe it's German, where they essentially do a whole bunch of random shit. And what I mean by that is like they're trying to cut foods perfectly in half. You guys might have seen clips about it where they'll get a scale, they'll get a random piece of food, and they'll cut it perfectly in half. And whoever is closest to getting it perfectly in half is the winner of that round. I want to try this because I want to see if this is actually as hard or easy. It might be easy, it might be difficult as it is in the clips, because there are people who are professionals at this, who are getting it perfect. Look, this one here is 0.44 each. He cut that pretzel literally perfectly in half. I want to try this. because this looks very fun. This is the type of game show I can get behind. Yeah, it's called Schlag and Hensler. Hensler? Schlag and Hensler. Schlag and Hensler. I'm not German, I don't know. But I want to try this one, and because it shouldn't cost that much. So, first thing we're going to be attempting is to cut a piece of something. I'm going to be using this, whatever the f call this, and an apple. Let's see if I can get these perfectly in half, because I want to see how difficult or easy this truly is. We'll start off with the apple, because I expect that to be a lot easier, because it is far more symmetrical, of course, whereas this one has a far more irregular shape and probably has a lot more tricky weight properties to it. Let's try and balance it. All right, I've committed. Okay, that looks good to me. All right, scales. We're at 0 grams. 41. Okay, this is 41 grams. Moment of truth. Oh, that's okay. I'm assuming that's good. All right, I'll just show you guys. 43. 2 grams out. 2 grams out. So I think getting it within 3 grams on my first attempt is pretty it's pretty good. I actually was not expecting this. So this one though is going to have a lot more variance. For example, it weighs 844 grams, so 844. Let's see. Silence in the audience. Let's see if we can cut this one in half. You see, the thing is, there's a little bit more complexity about with these sorts of shapes, because it's not perfectly symmetrical, right? Which means my cut can't just be directly in the center, because it's not going to be perfectly weighted. So we're a little bit more bulbous on this end, so I need to cut a little bit further towards that end. Okay, we've committed. I think that looks good. All right. This is a little bit more nerve-wracking than I originally thought. Oh no. Shit. That's nowhere near. I can feel it in my hands. This one's way heavier. 356. Yeah, we're way off. 480. Yeah, that one was a dud. See, it's a lot more difficult than you might first think. All right, last but not least, let's try an orange. This one has a little bit more, obviously, juices in it, so. Oh, that looks good. Okay, I did not expect to get a perfect, even cut. I did not expect that. I don't know why I'm so weirdly excited about cutting an orange perfectly in half, but I am. I feel satisfied and fulfilled. In terms of the difficulty for this one, I'm not actually sure what to give it, because like you saw with the other thing, depending on the irregular shape, the difficulty will exponentially get harder. So for like rounded things, yeah, it's easy, but when you get into those weirdly shaped objects, yeah, the difficulty starts to climb rapidly. So this one I'll give like, any score I give you is kind of useless. I recommend trying this for yourself. This was fun. I just enjoyed doing this. Get some friends and just cut random shit in half. That's fucking fun. Next clip. This one here is from, Anton Fomenko. Really, he does awesome stuff. I believe he is a stuntman, if I'm not mistaken. And I wanted to try this because it doesn't look that difficult. Now, I may eat my words. This may be really, really hard to do, and it might be really, really impressive. I have no idea. I've never done this before. And that's kind of the point, right? It's like, let's see how hard this really is. So what he's doing is casual coin record, and he has, I believe, maybe 7 coins, throws them up, and then he'll catch each one. But also, I should mention that obviously Anton does a whole lot more, way more difficult and impressive, you know, kind of feats and stuff than this. This was just one of those ones where I'm more personally curious, but I highly recommend checking out his channel because he does some cool shit. I've got a bunch of coins here, specifically 6, and I'll see if I can do 6 and we'll go up from there. I really hope that I can do 6. I have no idea how difficult this is. So you place them on your arm. That's 4. Let's see if we can keep going up. It's hard to show you guys, but there's 6 there. So I think 6 is probably my max, honestly. If I practice more and kind of like get a technique or develop a technique, I reckon I could probably do more, but just off the bat, never doing this before. He does, I think, like 7 in the clip. So I'm definitely gonna give this one like a 7 out of 10 for difficulty. I think it's just one of those things where you have to practice a bit and get your technique kind of down. Next up, this one is another kind of vintage clip / commercial, and I've actually seen this one recently repeated. So this here is Amir Khan. He's a boxer from you know, the 2000s ish, and what he's doing here is essentially getting some work in on a bottle of milk. Now, I think it should be obvious for anybody that this is a commercial. He's drinking a product, and then he puts the product perfectly on his arm to show the camera, and then he begins hitting it. There's a couple of little things that kind of obviously give it away, other than it's perfectly framed. The physics of the bottle don't look, they don't look perfect, especially when he hits it into like the towel or whatever. It kind of falls really strange. But the thing is, right, do I think that this is actually possible? Well, this is one we can actually give a go. I do think that we'll probably be able to get like maybe 2 or 3 hits, something like that. It's not going to be very clean though. It's not going to look like this, right? Like this looks nice. This looks amazing. But I don't think, like, I think it's possible, but it's going to look ugly, if that makes sense. So it just makes sense to, you know, CGI it, especially for an ad, right? If you're enjoying today's episode, you should really consider subscribing. I mean, I have a saw shield. I mean, I have a twin blade here. But if a twin blade isn't enough, I also have a trident. This is the type of content I do, along with giant swords and a whole host of other stuff. So if you like these sorts of things, you should consider subscribing. Let's go give it a go, because obviously this one we will try ourselves, and let's see if we can get at least close to it. Let's see if we can get at least, let's say, 3 hits. If we can get 3 hits, I would call it plausible, because obviously this is still an ad, right? This is still an ad at the end of the day. Now, I said that there was a modern interpretation of this, which there is. Jake Paul, I'm sure you guys know who that is. Recently, I don't know how recent, but you know, within the last however long, did essentially the same sort of ad for whatever product it is, right? And it's the exact same playbook. You know, he grabs a bottle and he starts hitting the bottle. Again, obviously it's a bit different, because obviously this is more of a modern clip, so the technology, like the computer generated effects, are much higher quality. But again, he hits it and it amazingly, perfectly sits down near the boxing bag to promote whatever this product is. Again, these are ads. Not real, but you can see there are a couple of frames here, like the physics of how it works, right? It's actually a good tell for a lot of these sorts of ones. There's usually a couple of tricks that people will use to create kind of a fake clip. The first one is obviously one we're going to get to in a minute, which is frame cutting, and the next one is usually, you can tell by the physics of a thing, because obviously if something has been, you know, added in as an effect or after the fact, it means that somebody has had to animate that, or somebody has had to keyframe that. And when you do that, it's not going to be perfect like real physics in the real world, because obviously something's real versus somebody who has human input. So we have an empty bottle. Let's see if we can do it. I expect to be able to at least get like 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky. I just don't think they're going to look very good, but let's give it a go. You see, when you hit these bottles, this is why you can tell it's fake. When you hit these bottles, they just fall down. So you've got to kind of hit it upwards. So the thing is, like I said, it's technically possible to do it, right? But it's not the same as in the clip. It's not like speed bag work. It's just trying to hit a bottle correctly so that it stays up in the air. Technically possible, super ugly in real life. I'd give it like a 4 out of 10. I mean, you guys can give this a shot at home. It's just an empty bottle, so you guys can try it. So these ads here, I love these ads, right? I used to watch these back on OG YouTube, right? I believe they're like, what are they? NFL fantasy files. So if you just YouTube that, you'll see a bunch of these clips, right? And essentially what these are is, I believe, just football type of ads where they do like a cool trick, right? If we want to put it that way. Now, these are not real. I shouldn't have to say this, but these are not real. And these ones, because they are in a time where the camera quality is a lot better than like the Bruce Lee one, we actually can see the keyframes of where the effects are. So in a lot of these cases, if we go frame by frame, you'll actually see where the transition is, where the cut is. So like I said before, there's a couple of different types of camera tricks and effects that people are going to use to fake these sorts of clips. In these particular instances, they seem to do a lot of just cutting between frames. Now, what sells it is, first off, our own brains actually sell this, but also the camera, I would say, fluidity. So if I was to set up a locked off shot, right, you just put a camera down with a tripod, it's really easy to do a whole bunch of effects because the camera stays in a locked position. It's much, much harder to fake something if the camera is moving around, right? If you've got real motion in the camera, it means kind of cutting between things is really, really difficult. It's really difficult because, and that's kind of what sells it, right? It's like, oh, well, I mean, if there's an effect here, but the camera's moving around, right? The thing is, obviously you can track frames, you can do a whole bunch of stuff, but if we go frame by frame, we can actually see right here, there is a cut between the two frames. One frame, his body is in a different position, his hand's in a different position, and in the next frame, all of a sudden, it's in a different spot. So the reason why this works is because, whatever this is, like let's say 30 frames or whatever it is, it means in motion, when you're just playing the video at full speed, your brain essentially just smooths it over. It's one of our things that our brain can do. I mean, we can also see the smoke effect here. It's slightly wrong because it starts up past his hand, so the smoke effect actually starts here rather than at where it would extend out of the drywall. So you can tell that's an effect added in post as well. And then when he pulls it out, you can see the pieces of drywall explode out with a whole bunch of springiness. Again, a visual effect. So again, really, really cool, really, really awesome ads, but again, they are just kind of ads. They're not real. So this one here is another good example because not only are they cutting between frames, but they are also blending between the frames. And there's a perfect example of this here. So if we go frame by frame, you see motion blur. We've been over this before, I think in the Ninja one where he was blending between frames. Motion blur, real motion blur, looks a very specific way depending on the frame rate, etc., etc. But there is one rule of motion blur, and that is motion blur only happens for things that have already happened. For example, if I wave my hand this way, there may be motion blur as a trail that goes back like that from where it starts to where it ends. In no world will there ever be motion blur where my hand hasn't gone yet. And so if we look at when he's catching the balls, this frame here, this frame is the perfect frame because he hasn't actually caught the ball yet, but the motion blur of the ball has already been caught because they're blending between two different frames. So obviously there's one frame of the ball being thrown and there's one frame of him catching the ball. So they need to blend between those. And when you blend between those, there's going to be after images to kind of smooth over, right? Again, that's kind of that psychological trick. When you watch this in motion, looks flawless, but when you actually break it down and watch it frame by frame, you see that obviously they're doing these camera tricks and whatnot. I thought that was another good one to kind of have a look at. But there's like full compilations. I highly recommend checking them out. They're fun. They're really fun. And again, it's that live camera movement, right, that kind of sells the shot. That's what makes it feel so real. Because if we had just that locked off camera position, kind of like this one, this is a locked off camera position, it means that it's a lot easier to do a whole bunch of different, kind of like effects because that camera is just sitting there. So you're able to do all this sorts of stuff relatively easy. But it's not the same as if the camera was actually moving, makes the shot a whole lot more complex. Sinking a nail. This is something that obviously I've used nails and hammers before, duh. I think I've played this game once, maybe. I feel like I have. I feel like I have a memory somewhere rattling around trying it. So I wanted to give this another go because I haven't done this in years, right? How difficult or easy is it to sink a nail in one shot? I think I'll give myself some grace, right? Let's say like 3 shots. Let's be generous here. I also did see this on that German show as well, with the cutting things in half. So let's see how many hits it takes me to sink a nail into some wood. Riveting stuff here on the channel today. Have some nails here, I'll sit them on the anvil. But when it comes to the hammer, I have a bit of a problem, you know, because of previous episodes, these are my regular claw hammers, which are not going to work for today's episode. So I had to grab one of the only claw hammers that I actually have left, which was this really shitty old one. But let's give it a go. So we've got some nails here. I'll just... This was attempt number 2, but you can still get under it. And attempt number 3, perfectly sunk. So I would consider that to be a solid 5 out of 10. Fun. You should give it a go. So this next one is something that I have wanted to try for a long while. Now, I didn't buy the item because it's super fucking expensive. I've seen a lot of people have these. I think the first person I seen have one was Brian Shaw. He had his giant mug. Him and Devon were kind of, you know, lifting it. Then I've seen Mr. Who's the Boss. I've seen AMP. I've seen a whole bunch of people try these world's heaviest mugs. And they weigh, from what I can tell, 10 kilos just on the mug itself. And then I think there's another like extension you can put in, specifically with the Brian Shaw one, where it has like another 10 kilo top. I really want to try it. Now, these mugs cost hundreds of dollars. This episode isn't going to make nowhere near hundreds of dollars. So I'm not going to do that. But what I've tried to do is I've just gotten some weights, some dumbbells, and I'm going to attach them to a mug somehow to get the right weight, and hopefully that will be a good enough analogy. I am incredibly disappointed in myself. So nothing out of the ordinary then. So in all fairness, I did try to actually use a dumbbell like I originally planned to be able to try this out. But the problem is the weights were just like, the plates are too large that it really just doesn't create the same dynamic as a mug. The weight distribution is just completely different. So it really didn't work as a good analogy. So I purchased one. Now, I looked for the cheapest one as humanly possible, and I was able to find one for about $130 local to me, which did have free shipping. And that was the biggest difference, because all the other ones that I saw were around about, you know, the $100 marks, $150 mark, but the shipping was also like another $100. So I was able to get one relatively cheap, but it's still more than this episode is going to make. The only issue with this particular mug is that it is an 8 kilo version, not a 10 kilo version. So we'll try this one out, and then we'll try and put on an extra bit of weight here. This is a 2.5 kilo. So with these two, we should get over the 10 kilo mark. So we'll try both though. So let's start off with our 8 kilo mug. I have been trying to get as much use out of it as possible because I actually really enjoy it. I've been using it as my regular mug. This and this pretty much weigh the same. These two things both weigh in around about the 8 kilos. This one's a little bit heavier, but they both weigh about the same. Like, I find that incredibly comfortable to just drink like that. All right, next up, let's try and fit the extra 2.5 kilos to it. The weight isn't as nice as before, obviously, but what's actually awkward about it is when you go to do it, because there's such a lip here, there's like an inch of steel between your lip and the actual drink, it's kind of hard to get the positioning right. So the difficulty of this actually comes from the fine motor skills. It's not actually lifting the weight. The weight's the easy part. It's when you get it up to your mouth and you're trying to take a sip very gently, right? That's when you got to kind of like control that weight, which makes it a lot more difficult. So in terms of a difficulty, I'd give this one probably around about a 5, I would say, depending on whether you've got the 8 or the 10 kilo. The 10 kilo is a little bit more difficult, but I reckon any adult male could still do this, right? But I think that's going to be all for today's episode, guys. I genuinely hope you enjoyed. Like I said, we're actually doing some debunking today. Lots of clips that kind of took me down memory lane, actually, because I watched a lot of these back ages ago, you know, when I was like still in high school, when I was still as a kid, right? Like the Bruce Lee one has been rattling around for decades at this point. Same with like the NFL ones. These are clips that I think are awesome. I loved watching them, but it's important to understand the context and the caveats. They're fucking ads. They're not real. And the sad thing is, obviously, in today's modern world where people just have no critical thinking skills anymore, people chop them up into shorts and they get millions of views and people are stupid, sadly. But that's going to be all. Thank you guys for watching. I genuinely hope you enjoyed today's episode. We finally did some debunking. Took a while, but we finally did some debunking. That's going to be all. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'll see you next week in another episode. Have a good one.